Welcome to the fourth episode of the Social Network Society podcast. The Social Network Society is a community aimed to foster meaningful connections among scholars engaged in research, teaching, and the practice of social networks.
In this podcast series, we'll spotlight recently published peer-reviewed articles and uncover more about the fascinating world of social networks through the lens of authors.
This podcast is brought to you by the Social Network Society communication team and is sponsored by the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Your hosts today are Danny Yin, an assistant professor at Penn State University,
Jason Ross, assistant professor at Western Carolina University,
and Tomova Shakur, assistant professor at Texas Christian University.
Today, we have the honor of chatting with Martin Kilduff, who is a professor at the University College London School of Management, and Kun Wang, who's an assistant professor of management at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. They will chat with us with their recently published paper with Stefano Tasselli, professor at the University of Exeter.
The paper is titled Self-Monitoring at Work, State of the Science. This paper reviews prior work on self-monitoring, linking it to careers, leadership, workplace social networks, authenticity, and more. The authors outline future research paths related to agency, top management, and cross-cultural outcomes and discuss important practical applications.
Thank you, Martin and Kun, for being here today. We're very excited to chat with you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we would like to start by asking you, how did you get into this profession? Did you always know that you wanted to be an academic?
Kun, why don't you go first?
Okay, yeah. So actually, I'm curious about your idea, but for me, I didn't know. So I guess I said the similar thing in my PhD admission interview with you, Martin, because you kept asking me about why I decided to switch from economics to management, to OB specifically. And you said I'm gonna spend like 5 or even more years working on the thing, so I should be very passionate about that. And so, I didn't know until I learned an elective course, which is behavior economics in Cambridge. I did my master in Cambridge. So I had been studying like economics for my whole undergraduate and my master, and I was committed to join industry as a financial analyst or investment banker or something like that after graduation. But after doing some internships like in the industry, I feel the culture isn't for me. But what really triggered my interest in behavior science, especially in the business environment, is after I learned behavior economics. But I feel like economics is not for me because it's too mathematical. And I'm just fascinated by how management scholars apply like social psychology theory and into studying human behavior. That's super interesting to me. Just like I opened the experience, so I decided I want to do this, and I feel that I actually like the process of doing research, and I like reading literatures. They're interesting to me, and I love designing studies, collecting data, and when I find significant results consistent with my conjecture, I just felt okay, I got a lot of dopamine in my body. So yeah, that's how I came to this career path, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So I guess I can follow on from that. Yeah, so maybe our trajectories are not that dissimilar. I was in an MBA program and, heavily dominated by finance. And so I also was thinking I need to get a job, along those lines. I was starting a family and have to get a proper job. But then I thought I found along the way during the MBA program, this is not for me. I don't want to be a manager. I don't want to be a financial analyst. And this course, this required course in organizational behavior, I thought, you know what? I could do this. I could teach this. I could even do research in this area. So that was so then I went from the MBA program to apply for the PhD program and ended up at Cornell University, And so no, I didn't always want to be an academic. It was there's nobody in my family who's an academic. I didn't really know any academics, so it was a long and winding road, I think.
Thank you both for sharing. How did you get into conducting social networks research?
For me, it was when I got to Cornell. I had no knowledge of this area before. In fact, I was a literature student most of my academic career. I had a master's degree in English and American literature. So where far from networks being the focus, it's usually the romantic hero who strives mightily by himself or herself against tremendous odds and finally, wins the girl or the boy or the fortune. And so it was a revelation to me when I got to Cornell. There were only two assistant professors there in the OB group in the Johnson School of Management, David Crackard, who just finished his PhD from UC Irvine, and Mitch Abulafia. They're both terrific. But it turns out there was a nexus of network people at Cornell. Steve Barley was there, he was into networks. Miller McPherson was there, Ron Breiger. It just happened to be this group of people who met not in the business school, but across into the ILR school in sociology. And so there was some kind of aha moment when I was sitting in one of these heavily quantitative network seminar being run by Steve Barley and David Crackart, where I suddenly realized that the whole basis of my thinking was wrong, that it wasn't all about individual striving. And I had a complete misconception about what was important, not just in research, but in the way that people live their lives. And that the prizes didn't necessarily come to the deserving, but to those who understood social networks and were and so on. So I switched. I did a heavily quantitative dissertation and tried to learn as many statistical and quantitative models and approaches as I could, because I was sorely lacking, having spent my time analyzing, romantic poetry and novels of the 19th century. So.
So yeah, for me, I guess I always have an interest in interpersonal relationships, but that interest is not well established from the perspective of networks. So after I joined UCL and Martin was my advisor, and I joined the environment for social network research, and I read Rena's paper. I guess that's a review paper on cognitive social network research, and I was super fascinated by, because I know that people are inaccurate, like we have like mismatch in terms of perceiving things from our own perspectives and other people's perspectives, and I know those things going on, but I just don't know how to study them, right? And I see very well established, like a promising research paradigm in front of me, and I want to also join that paradigm to do something. And I guess that's why Martin and me kicked off my very first research project is on the perceived rivalry connections, so from the for knowledge providers in organizations, and that also became my very first publication. And yeah, and from that on, I'm trying to growing up as a network scholar who can also mentor the next generation of next network scholars. Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you both.
So let's talk about the paper. Could you tell us a bit about the origins of this paper?
Sure. Yeah, maybe I should answer this. So, this is in the annual review of organizational psychology and organizational behavior. So that journal operates by invitation. So you get an email saying, would you be interested in writing a paper? And this was the title they gave me, which was Self-Monitoring at Work, State of the Science. That they chose the title. And so they sent it to me, and they said, you can have a couple of co-authors if you want, which I did want, because I don't like working by myself, and it's always good to get other brains and talents involved. So, and I thought this was a terrific opportunity because there had been a couple of self-monitoring reviews by coincidence recently, but I was displeased with them in some ways. I didn't think they talked about the things that I thought were important. And I should say that since my dissertation at Cornell, I've been interested in self-monitoring because I was doing network research, but then Mark Snyder came to give a talk at Cornell University. Mark Snyder being his dissertation at Stanford was basically the discovery and early establishment of self-monitoring as an individual difference variable. So he came and gave a talk and talked about the two different types of people and so on. And I thought this would be really interesting to look at this in connection with social networks, which also tends to have 0, 1, you're a friend or not a friend, binary. And here we have two types of people, oversimplification, but interesting. And nobody had actually done anything with respect to personality and social networks. It was like a complete blind spot because the field was dominated by sociology. And by and large, sociologists are not only not interested in personality, but it's sort of forbidden territory, if you like, because it's after Emil Durkheim, it's you don't go there because that's psychology, and sociology is supposed to be about social facts. It's not supposed to be about individual differences. So they asked me because I'd been doing some work on this, and then I knew that Kun was very interested in self-monitoring because she talked to me about it quite a bit, and so I very much wanted her help with that, and then Stefano was thinking about writing a review paper on this anyway, and so it was a natural team that emerged.
Yeah, I was very interested in monitoring in social network research, and I was trying to do something on that empirically, but all the ideas I proposed failed. Martin didn't think they work. So I didn't, have something like more like empirical driven some monitoring research. But the opportunity finally came that I can work on a review piece, and that's I very much appreciate this opportunity, and also it helped me kind of reinforce my research program and still echo with my strong interest on this topic. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. What were the biggest challenges when you were writing up the paper?
The biggest challenges, yeah. Well, the invitation didn't mention social networks at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think initially the three of us were writing a paper that was just trying to cover the different areas of self-monitoring research. And so I don't know that the paper had a real coherence to it. And so I think it was in the review process somewhere along the line, we made the bold move to put social networks at the heart of this paper in order to make it more systematic, coherent, and different from, and also to reflect the enormous importance of self-monitoring personality research for the social network research program. It's emerged as a key contributor. Sort of, I think Ron Bird has called it an analog of open closed network, something like this. So it's more than any other personality approach. It has a particular resonance with with social network research. And so that finally was reflected, but it wasn't there right at the beginning.
Personally, I think this is a challenge for me as a junior scholar writing a review piece. So it's kind of related to the other questions you're gonna ask. So for me, I think as a junior, because this is my very first review work, okay, and I feel it's a bit hard to have my own perspective and stance on the topic. So that's what I learned from Martin writing, no matter review paper or empirical papers, that we should have our own perspective on the topic. But it's hard in that we first need to have substantive knowledge of the topic, right? And after having that knowledge, you should be able to critically evaluate and reconcile inconsistent findings and figure out what might be the reason, and then have present your own stance when you're writing up a review piece. And I feel as a junior scholar, at the beginning, my tendency is to, just be very descriptive of what past findings tell us. And that's actually not a review work wants you to present to their audiences, right? And so I'm learning how to get over this conformity pressure to the mainstream ideas on the topic, and to have my own perspective shown. So I feel that's a learning process for me, and I'm still learning how to do better in that.
Thank you for sharing.
That's a very good point. Yeah. So that kind of edginess or stance that I think comes through in that review, that we also had to work on, because it's a fine balance. You're pushing you want to engage your audience so that it's kind of, this is interesting, this is different. And you've got kind of a point of view coming through here. At the same time, you have to, it says, state of the science. So you've got to be kind of objective. So it's a balance.
Great, thank you.
How many rounds of revision did the paper undergo?
3, but the first round is only for proposal, so it's super simple. And I guess the second round is most substantial one, and the third round is more about having more visually appealing figures, having more bullet point tables, and that's it. Yeah.
That's true. No, yeah, good. I mean, they wanted a proposal, so it was 1 page with some bullet points. That was what it was. It was very brief. And then a long time went past, and then we got some feedback not from anonymous reviewers, but from the editors, who pushed us quite strongly to include cross-cultural research was one thing. They wanted a model. They wanted a formal model of some kind. So they wanted quite a lot, and which wasn't, and it was helpful. But you mentioned the biggest challenges, so trying to deal with that was a challenge. But they seemed very happy once we sent it in. Yeah.
What kind of advice would you have for other scholars considering writing a review piece? And do you think junior faculty should invest a lot of time into this?
Well, there are different types of review pieces. There are review pieces where you get invited to write a review. I was standing in line at the Academy of Management trying to get into the New York party some years back, when an editor of one of these reviews was complaining about somebody who hadn't come through with the network review, and then kind of looked at me and said, "Martin, you could do it." And so, yeah, so in those circumstances, yeah, you should take the opportunity. But these days, no, I wouldn't necessarily recommend junior faculty or by themselves to try and embark on this. It's a lot of work. The good thing is, like the Annals or Journal of Management or Journal of Organizational Behavior, to mention 3 kind of competitive review processes, you just have to write a proposal, normally 5 pages. But what I'm learning is that 5 pages often has to reflect a sort of an iceberg or volume of work that you've done already, because they're fairly short deadlines. what I also worry about is that some universities don't value review pieces, especially outside of our field. So when you go to the college level, you're trying to get promoted. So people in production, operations management, or finance, they say, well, you're just reviewing other people's work. Where's your empirical research? That's a slight danger. So if you've got an alternative, should I do the review piece? Should I invest in an effort to further my research program empirically with target outlets, like AMJ or ESQ? Then you should do the latter, I think. If, on the other hand, you've got the opportunity to be part of a team that's writing a review, by all means, especially only if you're interested. If it's something as a core interest of yours. So Kun, I don't know what you would think about that.
No, I'm actually also seeking advice from you all on this topic as a junior faculty because I actually see many faculty members will train their PhD students by letting them write a review paper on the topic they're interested because it has a potential to be published right and anyways, and it can help the students kind of reinforce their understanding of the topic, but that doesn't apply to junior faculty cases. So I'm also seeking advice on that as well.
No, I think it's different for doctoral students. I do advise my doctoral students to write one of these and publish them. And in fact, they have. So to Kun, of course, but also Blaine Landis, Raina Brands have written these. Stefano Tasselli has authored lots of them. So as a doctoral student, it's good. You get your name out there. You have to review the literature anyway. It's just as a junior faculty member, I think the game changes a bit, slightly.
Thank you all for sharing those wonderful insights with us.
Now we'll switch to some content questions. We're curious whether people are always high self-monitors or always low self-monitors, or do we change how we approach a situation based on the context? Maybe we're high self-monitors at work, but low self-monitors at home, vice versa.
Yeah, I can give a stab at this. So if we want to simplify, there are two. There's the high self-monitors and the low self-monitors. The low self-monitors are pretty much stuck. They can't become high self-monitors. But it's very, very difficult for them. That's just the nature of the trait, because they are tuned internally, principled self and so on. The high self-monitors, yeah, they can. The research shows, for example, that they can be introverts or extroverts. And extroversion is a component of self-monitoring. So depending on what the situation seems to require, if it's very clear, a particular role requires pretending to be a low self-monitor, they can do that. They can do that. I mean, when Mark Snyder was validating this idea, he thought, well, actors will be high self-monitors, right? Because they are able to, and so he has a validation sample of actors. And so, an actor can be a high self-monitor, a low self-monitor, an introvert, an extrovert, and very compellingly so. They can pull it off. A low self-monitor is not an actor. A low self-monitor is very much invested in showing you his or her true self, or what they think is their true self, and their actual views about things. So in my experience, it's fairly easy to see who is a high self-monitor, who's a low self-monitor. No, the lows are not going to be able to switch like that.
Also, Martin and Stefano has research on personality change, right? You show that actually low self-monitors can somehow change their personality to a high self-monitor if there's a mismatch between their network position and their personality trait. So that means if they are occupying a brokerage position, but they're at the same time low sale monitors, they couldn't deal with maybe a lot of social demands imposed by the brokerage position. So to better, cater to the structural demands triggered by their network position, they will kind of adapt, and as time goes by, they may become, more and more high sell monitor.
Well, there's a caveat there. But yeah, that paper, yeah, we're working on it for an R&R. They don't become high self-monitor. They nudge up a little bit. That's all.
Okay, not very much significant.
It's in fact it's fairly small. It's significant and has a significant effect on work performance. But we didn't find low self-monitors becoming high self-monitors in brokerage positions. They score a little significantly higher on the self-monitoring scale, so it's kind of like, okay, like I've got to go and talk to these people that I don't really know or are different from me. Okay, I grit my teeth, and I guess the role requires it, I'll do it. But it's kind of like people who learn how to go around to parties and, okay, I'm supposed to go around, how do you do? How do you do? Oh, how are you? But it's not like they don't become movers and shakers. It's like they well, what's interesting, what Kun was saying there is that even that little bit is helpful. It doesn't take very much, it turns out, to get some of the benefits of the brokerage role, which yeah. So thanks for reminding me about that. I should know that paper, right? I'm working on it. Yeah, so we are interested in personality change, and it's just that you don't transform yourself into a completely different person if you're a low self-monitor. You get nudged up a little bit on the scale. Yeah.
This is fascinating.
So the next question is about potential gender differences. So we are curious that if there are reliable gender differences in levels of self-monitoring, and also do the outcomes of self-monitoring differ by gender? For example, are women less likely to benefit from high self-monitoring, maybe either because people expect women to be attuned to these situations, or because people think women who are highly flexible as inauthentic and so violate gender prescriptions?
What an interesting question. There's several things in there. So the meta-analysis by David Day et al., and that was back in, I don't know when, 2003 or something, did reveal a small but significant gender difference. So that, and it's kind of the opposite of what most people would expect. It's that men are higher in self-monitoring than women, and it's small, but it's significant. And if, as we show, as research shows, self-monitoring predicts who gets ahead in organizations and who occupies the executive suite, then that may be one explanation of some of the barriers to advancement for women. But I think you also asked a very interesting question, was if you are a high self-monitoring woman, is there some kind of penalty? Now, that I hadn't thought about. That's very interesting. That could well be an interesting research question.
Yeah, actually, Francis Fling had a research published in JPSP, that AOSET, and he did find that women actually benefited more from being a high self monitor than men do. Especially in the mixed gender occupations, or more broadly like masculine occupations. That's because women as a high self monitors will be more attuned to the gender stereotype expectations on them, and they can kind of behave in a way that that counteract the stereotypes on them. So that's why they benefited more. But in that context, men, doesn't suffer from that stereotypical expectations. So whether or not they are high or low self-monitors, they just, they're already in an advantageous position. So that won't affect them too much relative to women. So yeah, that's what I get from that paper. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Francis Flynn, Stanford. Yeah, was that in JPSP or JEP? I'm trying to remember.
GPSP, yeah.
JPSP, right. Yeah, and I think that could be an interesting research line to follow up.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sounds like probably also depends on the situation, and also like there are different dimensions underlying self-monitoring, and that dimensions itself may have some gender implications too. I find this fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, one of the critiques of self-monitoring is that it's the critics say a house divided unto itself. I mean, there are different components there,
Right.
and people give them different labels. It's like public performing, and where you're presenting yourself in public is one, and then other directedness is another, where you're looking to others for guidance as to how you behave and what's appropriate. So they're a bit different.
The social chameleons have a bad rep, I think, like a social, in people's mind. But data say that your review and a lot of other data say that they not only succeed, but often are well liked. So maybe perhaps the reason is that people believe that they schmooze and ingratiate for their own benefits. But flexibility in how one behaves can also be about like being considerate of others in different situations, right? So on the flip side, the principled actors may not adjust because of self-focus and lack of consideration. So we wonder maybe there's a moderator here. The flexibility and behavior and caring consideration of others are maybe two dimensions. And both chameleons and principled actors can be high or low on the latter consideration of others. Perhaps chameleons fare better than principled actors if they are not seen as caring, but fare worse than principled actors if they are seen as not. What do you think about this?
Let me have a go at this. I mean, it's a very important question. Because it gets at what is the major controversy in self-monitoring research in the workplace, which is it totally confounds and outrages some people that high self-monitors seem to be emerging as leaders, and they see themselves as authentic and are often seen by other people as authentic. And this flies in the face of everything that some people in OB want to believe, which is that, a leader should be principled, stick to his or her views, and not be driven by every wind that blows. And so this research, I think there's been efforts to dismiss it, to find opposites and so on. And so the question of caring is slightly different. So in the research that I did, which was looking at, so this is some paper with Ginka Turgel and Anand Narasimhan. So we had two studies from the same organization. One of them was including self-monitoring. And the question was, who helps people in organizations who are distressed? They're unhappy. And the answer was, it wasn't the low self-monitors. I mean, why wasn't it low self-monitors? Well, on the first case, the low self-monitors are busy communing with themselves, not necessarily noticing anything that's happening around them that much. The high self-monitors are watching and picking up signals as to what other people are feeling and thinking. It was the high self-monitoring managers who were, and we had two personality variables. It was self-monitoring, and it was also positive affectivity. So it was, and they both were predictive of who intervened to try to help people in the workplace who were having a bad day, if you like, or experiencing emotional trouble. So the idea, I think Kun mentioned Frank Flynn. So Frank also has some work showing that it's high self-monitors who actually are extending help and advice to people. Now, why are they doing it? The explanation that Flynn et al. Give is that it promotes their status. They are status seeking. So they want to get along, but they also want to get ahead.
Like what you mentioned, some high monitors not only want to get ahead but also want to get along, right? So the general impression is that they have very good social skills to like listen to others and consider like diverse perspectives, being considerate and empathic. So I guess that's it. And also my friend has just published meta-analysis on the relationship between self-monitoring and leadership. They find that actually, again, like self-monitoring is a two-dimensional thing, right? There's self-monitoring motivation and self-monitoring ability. So that's their finding. I guess that's helpful because they thought it's some monitoring motivation that's a part where most people don't like about high monitors, right? Because they think high monitors are strategically manipulating others' impressions in order to get personal gains or something like that. But some monitoring like abilities are not. They are like express caring for other people. They initiate the conversation. They make the social interaction successful. So so for me it's like it's a hybrid of two dimensions. One will like kind of piss people off because they don't like high monitors they perceive to be very instrumental and strategic, but actually we cannot forget about the very good social aspect of being a high monitor who is like very much likely to be our good listeners, our friends, and our professional ties in the workplace. Yes.
Right. And people can be high on self-monitoring also to benefit, like for pro-social reasons, maybe because they care about others, sounds like. So like,
They can. I mean, yeah, the motivation, I mean, I don't know about pissing people off because the actual high self-monitor's motivation, according to Christopher Leone and others, is to make social interactions successful. So it's very important to them. And when they engage in a social interaction, it's successful. And if it isn't successful, that it really bothers them. It doesn't bother the low self-monitor nearly as much. It's like, so I think you don't like it. That's too bad. That's not the high self-monitoring. It's like trying to find out how to make this. So they're very much in a kind of Goffman-esque, interaction space. And it's important for human beings that interactions be successful and not, you don't go around disrupting and making unpleasant people feel argumentative and so on. You done. I think I interrupted you. You were going to ask
oh,
something.
no worries. No, it's perfect. And it's perfect. My views about high self-monitors have changed. So that's perfect. Thank you. Fascinating.
Why do you think cross-cultural research on the topic has been largely absent?
Yeah, I thought it was completely absent, but then I was at Shenzhen at the Lakeside Conference there, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I was corrected that there was, so that was included in the review. There is a review showing remarkably, and this is surprising, on high self, there tend to be more high self-monitors in tight cultures relative to loose cultures. Tight cultures being where your freedom of behavior, if you like, attitudes are a bit restricted. So the UK is a loose culture, so is the US, but it's actually in the tight culture. So we do have some. That's the big one that I was reminded of. But it's missing in the workplace. There are lots and lots of research in different countries. It's just not comparative, so we don't know. Why is that? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I suspect possibly because you find much the same things no matter where you go. So maybe it's not that interesting. It could be that there's a file drawer there that shows if you're a high self monitor in Singapore and a high self monitor in England, you're going to get the same sort of outcomes. And I think it's speaking to something rather strange about self-monitoring relative or compared to other personality dimensions, which is that normally we think a strong culture suppresses personality differences. That's standard personality theory. That, if you have a strong situation, such as, I don't know, people in a church, for example, that the personality differences vanish. But self-monitoring is saying in strong situations, high self-monitoring comes to the fore because they like it. There's a very defined way of behaving and they will adjust almost perfectly to that because it's the ambiguous, loose situations that they feel uneasy in. And those are the ones that the low self-monitors enjoy because they can be themselves, there's no restraints. So it may be difficult to find these cross-cultural differences given the peculiar nature of self-monitoring relative to other personality variables.
Yeah, I also want to add that I think there are some critiques on in that the current scale of some monitoring capture more the faces, salient in individualistic culture. So, being adaptive could be different in the Eastern countries versus in the Western countries, and the current scale captures the faces more salient in the individualistic culture. So that's, there's a core for revising the scale that's specific for, measuring maybe the collectivistic culture or so. Yeah.
That's interesting. I wouldn't really jive with the fact that there are more high self-monitors in collectivistic cultures. Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much for that answer. We love the discussion around whether high self-monitors would suffer in an incredibly globalized and digitalized work environment that lacks clear guidelines. Are you planning on pursuing further empirical work on the topic?
I'm not, but let me ask Kun if maybe she has some interest in this.
Yeah, so I don't have a very concrete plan for now, but we all know that high cell monitors prefer, clear guidelines. They want the well-established rules. So there could be, some ambiguity in that we don't know whether high cell monitors can thrive, can shine again in the, increasingly more digitalized and globalized business environment because, the boundaries are getting blurred and the norms are not so much clear as they were before. So it's just, we just get attention here, right? And it could be promising direction to pursue in the future. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we start to get near the end of the podcast, we like to transition to more general, lighter things. So, Martin, you've had an exceptionally productive career. I mean, you're the first guest in the history of this podcast with a Wikipedia page. So, I guess what I want to know is what do you think's been the keys to your productivity and what's your motivation to keep doing this?
Yeah, those are good questions. the keys to my productivity are probably the opportunity to work with really interesting co-authors on interesting topics. I'm with Kun and others, Stefano, Raina, David Crackart was my supervisor. And I think I've been fortunate to be doing social network research, because when I started, when I got to Cornell back in the 1980s, I remember David Crackart said, you know, the social network research you can get in at the beginning here, and it's going to be burgeoning. Well, it's still burgeoning all these years later. It doesn't. So it's not a research program that seems to run out of steam, and so there are still things to do, and so I think that's it. The interesting topics and working with really good people has kept me going. What motivates me? I mean, yeah, I should be long retired probably by now, but it's a joy and a privilege to be in this career and have the opportunity to work on these kinds of problems. And I enjoy every aspect of it. I enjoy collecting the data, analyzing it. Well, before that, of course, coming up with new ideas, discussing, exciting, and so on, right through to the writing process, which I thoroughly enjoy as well, and the revision process. So all of it is challenging and interesting, and that may be unusual. I don't find any part of it to be off-putting, and so that's a long-winded answer. That's the best I can do, I think. Yeah, trying to look internally. Yeah.
Okay. So last question that we have. So trying to get a little controversy, some clicks with this one. So I'm curious, who would be on your Mount Rushmore of social network researchers?
Martin, for me.
Both of you. Let's go for it.
Do you want me to answer? Okay. Well, I mean, there are people, you know, my supervisor at Cornell was David Crackart, so he would be there for sure. I've learned so much from David. Such an inspiring figure for me, and really has led the field in terms of the cognitive social structure research. But then we've also got Ron Burt, who is throwing out ideas that the rest of us grab hold of and run with. He's a terrific person to talk with and to work with. I did have the opportunity to write one review paper with him, and that was a tremendous experience. Mark Granavetta, who came to Cornell, I mean, and gave a talk way back when. I remember it was it was the talk that became the embeddedness paper, and you wouldn't have known from the way he presented that this was such a landmark set of revelations. But he's a modest man, but a giant in the field. And I would also include Harrison White, who's been so, I think, inspirational to a lot of different researchers. Kathleen Carley at Carnegie Mellon University, who pioneered her own distinctive sort of work. I think Harrison White was her supervisor as well as Mark Granovetter. So that's why he's kind of in the background. And James Coleman, I think, has to be there as well. I could keep going on, but that probably I've run out of mountain space here on Rushmore.
I just feel to be a bit weird to say this in front of Martin, but I still want to say I not only learned a lot about research from Martin, but also as his student, I learned how to be an academic. I mean, in academic, we face a lot of pressure. He, as a role model, like show me how to keep good work-life balance and how to take good care of yourself, and most importantly, how to be a good mentor to my like maybe my future students, like how to respect the boundary between you and your students while being so supportive. So that's I really appreciate and feel fortunate to have Martin as my advisor. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Kun. That's very nice to. I should add one person to the Mount Rushmore as well, which is Dan Brass, who was very much my mentor at Penn State for a number of years, and just a kind, supportive, really smart guy, and we all miss him. Dan was he's played an outsized role, I think, in helping especially the micro foundations movement in social network research with the Link Center at Kentucky and the conference and so on. So Dan was a very close friend and collaborator. So yeah, he should be there. He should be there. He contributed so much to the field.
Thank you for the conversation. This is really insightful.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. What a terrific conversation we've had. It's really been delightful, and it's a great podcast series that you're spearheading here. Yep.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I'm so glad to have the opportunity to join the conversation. Yeah.
We love talking to Martin and Kun about their recently published paper with Stefano Tasselli. We learned a lot about the topic and got great advice on how to be a successful academic.
If you liked today's episode, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We're looking forward to getting your feedback. If you have any suggestions, feel free to email us at communications.sns@gmail.com. We look forward to touching base with you.